Welcome to episode 11 of the Lily List podcast, where our goal is to be a handbook for the living. We chat with Stacey Carter, a prominent advocate and community leader from Salisbury, North Carolina. She emerged as a powerful voice in the aftermath of tragedy, known for her appearances in the documentaries about the infamous Pazuzu Algarad killings. Stacey courageously shared her personal experience of losing her son's father to Algarad's heinous crimes. Her journey through grief and resilience has inspired many and led her to launch two impactful organizations, Happy Roots and Centered Horsemanship. Happy Roots is dedicated to providing nature-based wellness programs to improve the mental and emotional health of communities through garden-based education and outdoor experiences. Heart-Centered Horsemanship focuses on equine-assisted therapy, offering individuals the chance to develop emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and healing through interactions with horses. In our chat, Stacey shares her experiences, her advocacy work, and an incredibly challenging situation that led her to focus on having positive impact on the lives of others. As always, visit lilylist.com for more information on the podcast and platform. You can also contact us from the website if you have questions or ideas for people or topics you'd like to hear our CS cover. Thanks for listening. Stacey Carter, thank you for joining the Lily List podcast. I'm not going to jump in based on how I found out about you. I'd like to just start with where were you born? What was your childhood like? What were some of the impactful things that happened in your childhood, either events or people that kind of drove you in the direction that you went off in?
Okay. Well, I'm from Salisbury, North Carolina. I was born there. My parents lived in the same house, for pretty much my whole life. And, so I had a pretty good childhood, pretty stable childhood. And, my parents really, thought it was important to be outside when we were kids. My mother would literally send us outside and we weren't allowed to come in the house until dinner time. And so I spent a lot of time out in the woods, and I had two brothers. We were not in a big neighborhood. So we had another couple friends across the street who were also boys. So I was the only girl in the little tribe. But that was, so I guess I was a little bit of a tomboy, and just, spent a lot of time out in the woods, and went to camp every summer. And it was at Camp Cheerio where I first rode a horse. And then I don't know, I was absolutely hooked. I was obsessed with the idea of having a horse. And, I spent about a year begging my dad for a horse, and my dad passed away just about a month ago, and it's been tough. He was just the most supportive person in my life, and always just, if something was really super important to me, he would come through. And so after about a year of begging, he came home with a horse. We had enough land that we were able to accommodate that. My mom took up riding when I started. So I was 10, she was 40. But she recognized that maybe a 10-year-old kid that knew nothing was not really safe on her own with a horse in the backyard. So we took lessons together, and did pony club, and I was really into it. I did a lot of competing. I was an event rider. So that's dressage, cross country, and stadium jumping. And there was nothing I loved more than galloping a cross-country course. So I would say I was a teenager who loved the adrenaline and the excitement and the thrill. And so then I went to college, went to Davidson College. I was pre-med, was going to go to medical school, but also was a philosophy major. And so I ended up at Davidson. You can design your own major through the Center for Interdisciplinary Studies. And so I ended up designing a major in medical ethics. And as I really immersed myself in the subject, I came to the conclusion that I did not actually want to go to medical school. I just did not agree with the model of medicine and the way it was provided. And at that time, so I was in college between 92 and 96. So during that time, managed care was like the big thing. And it was clear to me that doctors were not really able to counsel people in healthy living. It was more about, here's the quick fix and here's the pill and all that. And I was not interested, did not want to go to medical school and end up sort of, committed to a system that was not, mentally where I was. So I graduated from college and had no idea what I wanted to do next. It's all this plan I had forever was out the window. And so I went back to working with horses, and, that was something I could make money at pretty easily and always had. And so that was, just what I was going to do till I got a real job. And then I really wanted to travel. And like part of me knew that if I didn't go and just do it before I had the job and before I had kids and family and all that kind of thing, it probably wouldn't happen. So I loaded up my dog Jojo and had a little Honda Accord, and I went across the country and traveled. My favorite band is a band called Widespread Panic. So went to lots of concerts and sold falafel sandwiches in the lot and other things, and, kind of paid for my way across the country that way. Got out to Washington State, and that's where I met Josh, who is, we got together pretty much immediately. It was kind of like that instant attraction. We just met and then we were together. And then, because I was traveling, so we traded in the Accord for a Chevy van, and he fixed it up all inside. So it had like a bed on a platform that we could use the underneath of that for storage. And it had shag carpet and like the whole 9 yards. Did not have air conditioning. But we drove it across the country and went to a lot more shows, and until we pretty much ran out of money. Came back to North Carolina. And he also was interested in horses and had ridden. So that was a big thing that connected us. And he went to horseshoeing school. So we found a place to live on a farm where we could basically work off our board by helping at the farm. But then he ended up going to horseshoeing school in Kentucky. And then when he got out, we ended up getting our own place in Davie County. Anyways, I think I realized there at some point that Josh and I got along really well when we were traveling around and living in a van, or he was in Kentucky and I was in North Carolina. Like actually living in the same house and being domestic and taking care of responsibilities and everything did not go particularly well. And it was a really stressful time. We were way over our heads on the mortgage. We had planned on getting land and starting a operation there. Like I was training and he could take in, horses that needed like hoof rehab and things. But we didn't end up getting enough money. The construction loan went over, and we ended up owing all this interest that we were supposed to be using to build our fence and build a barn and all the things we needed to run a business. So we ended up with this land and this house that we couldn't afford. Yeah. And so financial stress, I think, was the hardest part of it all. And we did have a son, Jared. But we split up when Jared was, right after he was born, pretty much, because that's when it really kind of came down to like needing to change some lifestyle things there, having a child, and and that we just couldn't agree on that. So
did you find when you were growing up, so I've heard this from a number of people, I did not grow up around horses. I grew up in inner city Boston, and there was no horses around there unless cops were riding them. Right. Did you find being around horses, riding horses, working with them, Did that kind of keep you grounded, keep you out of trouble when you were coming up?
I mean, I would say I probably would have been in a lot more trouble if not for horses. Yeah, because I was kind of that kind of kid, I was very adventure seeking.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it definitely did, because a lot of times I was competing a lot and I took my training very seriously. And I also taught riding lessons every afternoon after school to pay for my competitions. And so I did not have much time to go out with my friends. I mean, I did occasionally, but not, the horses came first.
Yeah.
So often on the weekends, I'd have to get up early to go to a horse show or something like that. And so, yeah, I would say definitely did.
And you mentioned your father and the relationship you had with him. I find myself, I oftentimes feel like I get along better with dogs than people.
Oh, yeah.
Was there something even from a young age that you realized you connected with horses?
Well, my brain always has worked a little differently than I think, and maybe not most people. Well, I mean, I guess most people, but the culture that I was around, okay, like we're in the South and a very kind of like religious community. But I grew up in the woods. I was very like philosophically minded. I questioned everything. So I was like the kid that they hated at Sunday school because like I was wanted them to prove all the things I was supposed to believe. And then, I was supposed to just have faith and shut up. And like, I was not okay with that. And so, yes, I would say that, I felt more comfortable with animals because my brain just worked a little differently and I didn't have to explain myself to them, So, yeah.
We sort of ran up to Josh. And of course, I'm sure how a lot of people have met you recently was through that story. You mentioned domestic life wasn't the best fit.
Yeah.
And things kind of went south from a living standpoint there.
Yes.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there's so much out there, and I'm more interested in kind of what you took from that experience and how you came out of it.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if there's, if you want to touch on that quickly, kind of.
So, I mean, I'm glad I came out of it. There were times where I wasn't sure because people talk about sort of the dark night of the soul and that kind of thing. And there was a period of my life that was really, really, really hard after all of that. And I feel like I'm on the other side of that, but I can relate to, people that are struggling with depression and anxiety and all of those things. And I think Josh, when I left, he wanted to stay where we were in the house that we were in. And I just needed to go. First of all, there were a lot of reasons, again, things that we didn't agree on, but also there was like, just travelers, a lot of times staying in our house and people, bringing LSD and things. And I was afraid of losing my child. I didn't want my child to end up in social services, And so it was like, okay, I wasn't willing to gamble anymore with that kind of thing. And he, disagreed, that's what we need to always live this way and didn't see any reason to stop. So that was, again, that wasn't the only reason, but that was one of the main reasons. And so then when I left, Josh, I didn't realize it, but he had stopped paying the mortgage after a time. And so that property ended up getting foreclosed on. By the time I found out about it, it was way more than I could ever afford to pay what was owed. And so we lost that. And then he moved into a friend's place, a trailer that they had available. While he was there, he got arrested for selling mushrooms or having mushrooms delivered through the mail. And because it was the U.S. Postal Service, it was a felony charge. And after he got that felony, he lost a ton of clients. He was on the front page of the Davie Enterprise, like small town. And he already wasn't really that great on the business side. Great with horses, great trimmer. He went to barefoot hoof trimming. But anyway, but not so great with people. And you got to like show up and you got to call people back and do all those things. So he really he was in a very low place and got some other jobs, but was having a hard time getting a job because of the felony. He also lost custody of Jared. So up till then, Jared was going back and forth. And so, we didn't have so this was, before Facebook or anything like that. And, he would just kind of have a different phone number all the time. And I wouldn't even know how to get in touch with him, but he would just show up sometimes at my house to hang out with Jared. And then the last time I saw him, he'd been working for the Renaissance Fair, and he was helping with the camels. And I knew he really wanted to go on the road with them, but he couldn't because of he was on probation. When he disappeared, I thought that he had just skipped probation and gone on the road.
Yeah.
And didn't hear from him for months and months until I heard a rumor that he had been murdered. And then that's when I went to the police and I said, look, this guy Pazuzu supposedly buried Josh in his backyard. And they're like, oh yeah, we know all about this guy. And anyways, that's all in the documentary. Yeah. Okay. That was, but they did agree to go search, but they didn't find him. And I have no idea how they missed that because he was there in the backyard
From what I saw, it sounded like they weren't looking very
didn't
hard.
Look that hard.
Yeah.
So then for the next 4.5 years or so, we just didn't know I knew at that point, once we started really, I started really reaching out to everybody that knew him. And then, and then also at that time when I went to the police is when I found out his car had been found abandoned. So I never knew that either. I thought his car was gone and he was gone. And I think during that time, it was really hard. I mean, what do you tell your kid? Jared was not even 3 years old. He was 3 when we found out that. And he's still struggling. I really feel like that he's still dealing with the repercussions of the stuff that happened. Just having a parent disappear. And Josh was not a perfect person, but he loved his kid. I mean, he was all about the kid. And when he was with Jared, he was like a great dad. So that was, that time was just, I think I was kind of in a blur. I was working all the time. I just was a workaholic, and that's how I dealt with it. Or I was drinking, pretty much one of the two. And I just couldn't, I didn't realize until much later when I started to understand how the nervous system works. I was fluctuating between the sympathetic or, that fight, flight and or freeze. I just couldn't act. I couldn't do anything or just shut down. I just, and it was not in a very good place. At one point, I just kind of panicked and I had to move. I moved Jared and me up to a friend's place because I just didn't feel safe where I was anymore. And it's just, I can't even explain it. I just, that kind of anxiety. And so now, because of the work I do, and with horses and people and really understanding the nervous system, I can look back and see, but I didn't have any supports. I mean, my family was supportive, but I didn't have any money. I didn't have health insurance. I couldn't go to get therapy. I could barely feed us, and so I was just doing all that alone. And yeah, it was, it was a rough time.
What was the thing or things that, that stuff can snowball and it can get out of control. And at some point, something happens where you have to stop and reset.
Yeah.
And then go forward. And
so I was working at a therapeutic riding center, and I was there for 10 years. And I had moved. I had been living there on the property. I'd moved away to live with friends, but then I ended up coming back to Salisbury and moved in with a friend at the time, and she and her husband ended up buying the facility that I was working at. The previous owners got divorced, and the owner didn't want to run the farm without her husband anymore. And so she sold it. Very shortly after they bought the farm, I was replaced. So I lost my job. I lost all the programs I created. I lost all my clients. I lost all the horses that I'd trained. I literally lost everything. So when I left Josh's, I lost everything because when he stopped paying the mortgage, I lost all, everything we'd put into that house and that land and that farm, which was everything I had. gone. So I rebuilt my life working at this therapeutic riding center. And then they, I think, thought maybe somebody else would make them more money. I don't know exactly what their reasonings were, but it was taken. So I lost everything again. And I moved up to a friend's place where she had some land in Moxville and I could have my horses there. And I had days where it was all I could do to just walk out of the house.
Yeah.
It was so hard. That was the lowest point of my life. And that's when I found out that they found Josh, like, during that time. Yeah. And it's interesting because everybody was calling me like, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? And like, honestly, the feeling I had when I found that out was just this euphoria, like this huge, like, thank God, like he's free, like he's been released from this place, you know. Interestingly, it actually, it brought a lot of closure, you know. Yeah. But meanwhile, I was still, you know, trying to figure out how I was going to put my life back together and dragging this poor kid around with me. I'd already been through all this stuff. And ended up moving to a farm. A client of mine bought a farm, and I was living there and running the farm in exchange for, you know, board. But it was just too far away from anybody I knew. I wasn't really able to grow a business there. And so I ended up moving back to Salisbury, and somebody I knew wanted to rent a house and needed a roommate. It was a big, beautiful house on Main Street. And so we moved there. Well, turns out she was a little crazier than I had anticipated. Went off her meds like a week after we got there, and about a month later told me I had to leave. Wow. So then we moved, found another place. And so you can see there's a lot of moving around. But during all of that, somehow my friend Ashley and I managed, like, we started a music festival called Earth Day Jam while I was working at the Therapeutic Riding Center. And that was, we first held the event at that farm. And then we moved it to another farm, and then it's been moved around. Now it's held in downtown Salisbury, at the Bell Tower Green. Anyways, she wanted to not just do this one-time event each year, but like do a nonprofit throughout the year to do more like pro-environmental education and services and projects. And so we started Happy Roots. I can't remember what year that was now, but maybe around 2012 or something. And so she's going strong with that. I've been focusing more on my horse business, Centered Horsemanship, and growing that, but also still involved with Happy Roots. And really, you know, my personal interest is working with youth and providing mental health services for youth, and really paying attention to how we can prevent mental illness. Yeah. As kids get older. You know, the younger we get involved, the better. So we do youth programs with Happy Roots. It is primarily community gardens and school gardens, like garden oriented, but also the mission is nature-based therapeutic and educational services to enhance the wellness of the community and the environment, which I wrote that. But broadly, to incorporate things like working with horses, yeah, you know, and yoga. So I also became a yoga teacher. So the horses and the yoga for me were my ways of coping. Mm-hmm. And wasn't even like healing, or, you know, I wasn't even having therapy or anything. It was just like how I could get through my day and keep myself together. And then, you know, I just slowly realized how powerful it actually is. Yeah. And then kind of blending the two things in my work. And so, you know, I got involved in equine-assisted therapy many years ago when I was at the Therapeutic Riding Center. The original owner got her master's in counseling and was very interested in offering these services. So I started a program for veterans with PTSD through the Wounded Warrior Project at our VA hospital in Salisbury. Sadly, when I was removed from the farm, I also lost that program. But it really, I had some good opportunities to kind of get pushed into that direction, and understanding that, and I personally shifted from during that time from being this thrill-seeking rider who just wanted to run faster and jump bigger to having really not any tolerance for that. Like, I didn't want to be stimulated. I didn't want to be scared. Like, I wanted to ride all the roller coasters when I was younger. And now it's like, Thunder Road was like all I could handle. Like, they took that one out. Carowinds. But I can't, I don't tolerate that kind of stress well anymore. Yeah. And so with the horses, I've really gone in a direction of more therapeutic work, and even in riding, how can we work with the horse in a calm and relaxed and connected way, as opposed to more performance-based activities.
Have you are these, I'm assuming they're nonprofits you've started up at this point? Are they?
Happy Roots is a nonprofit. Yeah. Centered Horsemanship is not.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
I was going to say, did you have to get into grant writing and?
Yeah, so definitely that's a big part of it. Now, I've partnered with other organizations to offer services, but I'm not interested. I'm barely running my own business. That's not my interest. And I would, I've got 5 horses of my own that I take care of every day, and plus the horses in our program at the farm. And so I try to minimize that. And as far as Happy Roots, again, my partner Ashley's kind of taken that over.
Yeah.
So I'm involved in providing some of the programming and helping with events, but I do not run the business at all.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a little while to find that thing.
Yeah. And I had horses from the time I was young, but I never thought when I was that age that I would be doing that for a living, but and I never was interested in sort of the traditional horse business.
Yeah.
And I have for many, many years, kind of been on this mission. So I got exposed to some really great teachers. So even when I was going through all this hard time, there were good things happening too. I went to Arizona and worked with a woman named Barbara Rector, who is sometimes called the godmother of equine-assisted therapy. She is an amazing woman. And so her program is called Adventures in Awareness, and it's really expanding awareness and listening to the horses in this whole new way, and understanding energy. And, a lot of people don't like that word because they're like, well, everything's energy. Like, what the hell do you mean? But when I'm working with horses, there's definitely, we can influence our own energy and then the horse through that. And so I kind of went on this path of wanting to understand how to, train horses in a way that was congruent with this idea of they're sentient beings and they're equal, and it's not up to us to subjugate them or, and so in traditional horse training, often the goal is for the horse to be submissive.
Yeah.
So in equine therapy work, you don't want a submissive horse. You want an authentic horse that's going to show up in all their horsiness and, give you things that humans can't.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, can we do both? Can I train horses? Because people were sending me horses to start under saddle and things like that. And if I couldn't get that horse rideable and walk, trot, canter and going on the trails in 2 months or 3 months, they would pay someone else. Yeah. So in order to get people to pay me to hang out with horses all day, I had to make it happen, right? But I wanted to make it happen in a way that wasn't about dominance and that wasn't about making them uncomfortable until they submitted to my will and all that. And so it really, this is a path I've been on for, 20-something years now, I guess. And it's really starting to come together. I'm like, okay, no, you have just met me, but I'm going to tell you that my life, there's this common theme. I'm just like, okay, I'm just figuring it out. I'm getting it. It's all coming together. And I've been saying this for probably the past 25 years. Yeah. I always feel like I'm on the cusp of really understanding things. And, but truly the work I'm doing now, what I learned is it's not about training horses. It's about understanding the nervous system and how to be an influence on the horse through our own regulation and intention and mastering of energy, and how to communicate with the horse in their natural language. And that so instead of trying to make them understand something that we are teaching them, it's like we understand how to communicate in the way they already know. Yeah. And so now, I often say, like, I don't train horses, I train people. And so the work I do with horse owners and students and clients, it might look a little different than what I would do in like a therapy session. For instance, I work with teens in a mental health facility. They do not ride.
Yeah.
It's all on the ground. But what I'm teaching is essentially the same thing, no matter who I'm working with, and these kids really can benefit from things like self-regulation.
Yep.
Right. And so I also teach them yoga. So I go and teach them yoga once a week, and then they come and work with horses as well at the farm. And so it's nice because I can kind of, blend a lot of the things we do in the yoga then when we can use to, with the horse, and then even teaching them how to do some hands-on stuff with the horse to help the horse relax, to release muscle tension. And you build this relationship where the horse you ask, and they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes. They say yes. They're like, okay, fine. And then you just kind of develop this connected movement. So the way that horses in a herd move together, or a flock of birds, or, school of fish or whatever, they're not talking about it. Nobody's taking a vote. They just flow together in this beautiful way. Yeah. And so, to make a short story long, so I think, though, like, it's not for me just about horses. I love horses. I'm really not interested in, teaching people how to win more ribbons on their horses. Yeah. I believe deep down that horses can make people better people. Yeah. And that we really need to work on, being better people, because, I think a lot of people are struggling right now.
Yeah. So. When we first talked on the phone, that was, I mentioned, took me till late in life to figure, I don't know, depending on if you think I'm old or not at this point, but took me a while to figure out that idea of to really have successful relationship in any sense, one-on-one or group or societally, there's a concept of understanding self and understanding others. Yep. And the understanding self and understanding others are tied together. Yep. And it's almost impossible to do one successfully without the other. And what I find with animals, horses, dogs, whatever, is the communication is so low level and it's so pure.
Yeah, agree. In fact, I think I posted something on Facebook recently about, like, I think that that animals resolve conflicts much easier because they don't have to use words.
Yeah.
I think in a moment of frustration of trying to verbally, hash something out with somebody that, I just want to, move on. Like, I see, when I look at relationships, I don't think so much about the specifics. I see the energetic dynamics of the relationship, and with animals, it's much more pure. Yeah. But also, when thinking about, like, nervous system regulation, one of the most important factors to our feelings of safety are the cues we get from others. Yep. So we have to be in relationship to be truly safe.
Yeah.
So we might be like, oh, people stress me out, I need to be alone. But honestly, and horses, this is even more so, because being prey animals, then, they don't sleep as much, like full out, lay down and go to sleep. But they'll doze off standing a lot. But, somebody's always got to be the sentinel. Yeah, yeah. And so there's, again, that safety in the herd is really crucial. And the messages we're sending. And so one reason why horses, I think, are so powerful for therapy is that people will really make an effort for a horse in a way that they might not for themselves.
Yeah.
Or they say, I can't. So I'll say, look, that horse is getting stressed. That horse needs you to hold space to be present, to take that deep breath, to release tension, to soften in your body, but at the same time holding your space. So you have to have that, strong boundaries, but a soft presence. And people get it, like that. Oh, okay. Like that. Yes. Like that makes sense. And you kind of start to practice and master that skill. And then you can start to take that into other situations that are stressful and use those same tools,
I think that's a good pivot. One of the things I ask about often is if people are thinking about legacy, do you think about, you're obviously a yoga teacher in good shape, many more years ahead for you.
You never know.
You never know, but if I was betting, you've still got some time.
Well, it's a good thing because, I have friends I'm 50 years old. I have friends that are looking at retirement and I'm like, I feel like I'm just getting started. Like, I just figured out what I want to do with my life,
That's funny. I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm just figuring out what I want to do with my life. So yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think at all with your horse work, with the roots work, the kids work, your own son, like you may not have time at this point to put too much thought into it, but is that something that crosses your mind?
I feel like that the things that I've learned, like I want to share. I want it to influence, people that come after me and how they work with horses, but then also those tools for themselves. So in working again with the teens in the mental health facility, it's been very eye-opening. So one thing I've realized is I've always appreciated horses, equine therapy since I first learned that was a possibility. But I've really seen how easily these kids engage with the animals in a way, like when I show up with the yoga mat, like it is a lot harder. Yeah. They have taught me a lot. It's not like going to a studio and you get all the ladies that come in and they're all ready to do yoga. These kids are like, yeah, no. Like, I'm just going to lay over here and read a book and put my earbuds in or whatever. And so trying to get them to engage has really changed the way that I work with them. But at the farm, it's a no-brainer. It's so easy. Well, we're going to go over here and hang out with these animals. Then we're going to go over here and hang out with these animals. And then we're going to go take some horses in the arena and do some things. And they can choose what they want to do. They don't have to do anything. They can groom if they want. And I show them how to lead. I'm like, well, if you're going to lead, you have to do it this way, but you don't have to lead. But, but they, and I explained to them why I'm very particular about how they do it. These are my horses. I'm like, these horses aren't trained. They only understand if you speak their language, So, it's so, I feel like I can get the message to them in that venue so much more easily than in other ways, And so I feel strongly that that all children should have training in regulating their own nervous system. I feel like all veterans that come back from combat, they don't need to wait until something bad happens or they get a diagnosis of PTSD. You've been in a freaking war zone. You've had somebody giving you orders and telling you every move to make from morning to go to bed. Like you forgot how to think for yourself. Maybe some shit happened and like we need to just be like, okay, let's, work on that and make sure that you have the skills to self-regulate and because in order to have meaningful relationships, in order for the body to heal, all these things, we have to be in a certain state in our nervous system. So when I was going through all that time of constant stress and never feeling safe, never, and I didn't even quite realize that was happening, but I had my teeth started having problems. My hair was falling out. Like I was physically not well because our body doesn't repair. It doesn't, we're not using the nutrients that we're taking in. And the state of our nervous system is critical. So for instance, if somebody's got a disease, and they're stressed and they're afraid because they're sick, then that can prevent them from healing.
There's no difference between the mind and the body.
Yeah, there is no. That's all. And so if I could leave a legacy, it would be let's teach people the importance of understanding your own nervous system. And so animals, they don't have this conscious thinking brain that gets in the way. So they don't worry about the past and the future and all that, right? So they go back to that state and that parasympathetic nervous system really easily. So they're good self-regulators. And we humans just aren't, you know? And if you spend a lot of time with animals, you'll probably notice that even though stuff happens, they get injured, whatever, they're very good self-healers. Yep. Now, the more domesticated the animal, the more likely they're going to have problems because they, you know, we mess them up. You know, we kind of can create, I see it with horses all the time. Humans create all kinds of stress-related problems for horses, and not intentionally. But, you know, wild animals, they're good self-healers, you know, and why are we so dependent? You know?
I think any animal, if they're in a consistent state of that fight or flight, that's often what I see with dogs, particularly dogs that are, you know, they're in stressful situations and people are yelling at them or hitting them or, you know, and that dog sort of never knows what the right thing is or, you know, what it should be doing. Again, that boundaries, but being sort of soft physically.
Yes, exactly.
When they don't have that, they are unsure of how to act. And
right.
That makes sense.
And so one of the things I talk to my clients about is, you know, how can we give these signals of safety? Mm-hmm. So it's through our body language and even our breathing and our muscle tension, all these things. And the horses can pick up on all those things. You know, they're very attuned to those kind of subtle details. And they can tell the difference in the wild between a predator that's hunting and a predator that's just meandering by based on the body language and their intention. So they read intention. And they give us feedback, you know, they'll give us a lot of feedback. So I can, you know, I see it all the time. The same exact horse will be completely different with different people because they're responding to what that person is. And sometimes I'll say, you know, horses show us invisible things, you know, so I might not even be able to pick up on it, but they're picking up on it and responding to it. And so, you know, we have to have those spaces of safety. And I think a lot of educators don't understand that if, for instance, a child is in that constant state of anxiety or shut down, so dissociated, learned helplessness, you know, that in the polyvagal theory called the dorsal vagal state, they cannot learn. So you can shove all the information at them that you want. And then what happens? Oh, like they can't learn because their brain isn't receptive. It's too busy, like, in, you know, trying to stay safe, to engage and to have a meaningful relationship and take in new information. And so then, you know, what happens? Well, they make a bad grade. Well, then they're more stressed and there's more anxiety. And like, you know, so we are not serving our children by ignoring the condition of their nervous system and their feelings of safety and support. You know, that has got to come first. And with Happy Roots, you know, one of the things that we really want to do is build community. And because, you know, again, like the safety of your community is so integral to the state of your nervous system. And then everything else, you know, your ability to have good relationships, your ability to function and learn, your ability to heal, you know, all the things that are important. I think in our society, you have a lot of people that are, you know, very community oriented and really compassionate. But then you have a lot of people who are like all about, you know, getting my own and who cares about the rest. I mean, I've been looking at this, you know, Project 2025 stuff. And it's like, oh, so if you're a have-not, you're screwed. Like nobody cares about you. Like, you know, it's terrifying. It's the idea that we could have a society like that, to me, is very, very frightening. And it's like, I see lots of people who would like nothing better.
The thing I end these conversations with is, so you've got a child, you've got a business, you may or may not have a certain amount of wealth, but we do live in a government-controlled, legalistic society. Where are you at with wills and medical proxies and having things set should something happen to you?
Well, I don't have a whole ton of assets. And so, I've really not done anything to be honest, and I should, but I think I've just been so busy surviving for all of these years. I've never really accumulated much. And I have one son, so it's as far as an heir, there's nothing to divide, he's an adult.
The one thing I always tell people is, if nothing else, have
the living will,
your medical stuff set.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you don't want to do is leave it to your son to have to make decisions, or
that's a good point,
whomever else is out there. So it's never fun to think about that, but
no, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
So, not the high. We can end on a high note. What do you? So what do you got coming up? And if people wanted to learn more, where can they go?
As far as what I have coming up. So right now I have been doing events and things on hold as I work with a company to create a new website. And I'm working with a company called Horse Biz Automated, and they automate your horse business. And so we've designed the website, and it's about ready to go. And my goal is to grow my business teaching clinics and traveling to teach. So, so this is going to help make it easier for potential hosts to find out who I am and to book me to come, and then for people to, sign up to attend. But that's what I really love. I love traveling, but when raising a child, as a single mom, I didn't really get to do that very much. So now that he's grown, and now that I really feel like I've got clarity in what I'm doing with my work. So that's what I want to do is to spend more time traveling and teaching, and just kind of reaching more people outside of my local community.
Cool.
And my message to people is, your feelings are the most valuable thing that you have. Protect them, foster your joy, foster your love and connection and gratitude, because that is where the quality of life is, Yep.
Well, I thank you very much for your time, for coming up to Greensboro.
Yeah.
I know you got a class coming up. I'll let you get going. And I look forward to getting down to your way and
come visit the farm. Absolutely. Yeah.
All of very that. Cool. And I'll get some links from you, and I'll throw them in the description where we roll this out. And
you can't hang on to yourself. You don't have to try not to hang on to yourself. It can't be done, and that is salvation. The most important thing for anyone to realize is that you and every person you see will soon be dead.